But why do we keep going to war? It seems like a naive question to ask, but I'm wondering it. Getting along this train of thought got me to come up with the first idea for my Absurd series, which is I propose we make war non-lethal by 2050. Kurt Vonnegut's most well-known book is Slaughterhouse-Five. In the book, Vonnegut follows the story of Billy Pilgrim. He's a prisoner of war in Dresden during World War II. And he gets captured by aliens, he gets put in a zoo as the Earthling exhibit, and he learns how to observe life from a fourth dimensional perspective. Vonnegut himself was a prisoner of war in Dresden when he was only 23 years old in World War II. And he was actually in Dresden when the Allies firebombed it and killed over 100,000 people. And he survived by mere chance, and when he got back to the US after the war, he wanted to write a book about it. Many people know the book Slaughterhouse-Five, they've at least heard of it, but not everyone knows the subtitle of Slaughterhouse-Five. The subtitle is actually, Or the Children's Crusade. In the introduction of Slaughterhouse-Five, Vonnegut talks about the process of wanting to write a war novel. Initially, he was thinking of doing what most war novels do, talking about the horrific events, the bravery. He was talking to an old war buddy trying to come up with new memories to see what should go in the book. He recounts in the introduction of Slaughterhouse-Five how that conversation went in the living room with his buddy, with his old war buddy's wife listening closely. That was about it for memories, and Mary was still making noise. She finally came out in the kitchen again for another Coke. She took another tray of ice cubes from the refrigerator, banged it in the sink, even though there was already plenty of ice out. Then she turned to me, let me see how angry she was. And that anger was for me. She had been talking to herself, so what she said was a fragment of a much larger conversation. "You were just babies then," she said. "What?" I said. "You were just babies in the war, like the ones upstairs." I nodded. This was true. We had been foolish virgins in the war, right at the end of childhood. "But you're not going to write it that way, are you?" This wasn't a question, it was an accusation. I don't know, I said. "Well, I know," she said. "You'll pretend you were men instead of babies, and you'll be played in the movies by Frank Sinatra and John Wayne or some of those other glamorous, war-loving, dirty old men. And war will look just wonderful, so we'll have a lot more of them, and they'll be fought by babies like the babies upstairs." So then I understood. It was war that made her so angry. She didn't want her babies or anybody else's babies killed in wars, and she thought wars were partly encouraged by books and movies. So I held up my right hand and I made her a promise. "Mary," I said, "I don't think this book is ever going to be finished. I must have written 5,000 pages by now and thrown them all away. If I ever do finish it, though, I give you my word of honor. There won't be a part for Frank Sinatra or John Wayne. I tell you what," I said, "I'll call it The Children's Crusade." Vonnegut, among others, captured the brutality, but also the silliness and the meaninglessness that most soldiers feel during war. Nearly all soldiers relate to this in one way or another. Of course, some wars, like World War II, they have noble and worthy aims, and I'm not an absolute pacifist. I think sometimes violence is justified, and fascism and a race superiority complex seem to make that cut, at least for me. But nevertheless, the subjective experience for most veterans and most family members of veterans during wartime seems to be abysmal. But why do we keep going to war? It seems like a naive question to ask, but I'm wondering it. So getting along this train of thought got me to come up with the first idea for my Absurd series, which is I propose we make war non-lethal by 2050. We can start out slow, of course, because progress takes time, but first let's stop using guns and revert to old weapons like swords and bow and arrows. Then we switch to breaking limbs, gentle torture, and similar stuff like that. We can have MIT undergrads design robots that battle other robots. Next, we're going to move on to war games, like intense versions of Capture the Flag, but the winner gets the North Pole or something. We'll switch to cooler weapons like net guns, stun darts, strategic traps and illusions like fake cities, Trojan horses, this kind of thing. There's going to be these sort of awesome mind games and deception, and there's going to be first to the moon style victory indicators. So whoever can lower the poverty rate the most in their country is the winner of the war. The goal of war is almost never mere death. It's usually some sort of resource or land control, or some type of power or advantage. So let's keep those for now. So the winner of the first peaceful war will still get dibs on some sort of coveted resources or strategic position, and they can have like double vote at the UN or something like that. But then we're going to remove even those benefits. We're going to switch to a ceremonial honor for the winner. Like, India is the greatest country on earth for a full year. We all have to admit it. Because they were the first to successfully reduce the number of automobile accidents below a certain percent, whatever it is. Eventually, if we follow this train, all war will resemble a World Cup, but for all of Earth, with Earth-wide challenges like solving world hunger, climate change, and the winner gets to host the following time. So we've switched war from violence being the victory indicator to things that are a net benefit for everyone. The thing is, this seems silly and fun, but it's not that crazy. We already banned certain weapons like chemical agents and nuclear weapons. The Geneva Convention is very strict about what is okay and not okay in the business of killing each other. Why not make missiles and heavy bombers just as taboo and rare as nuclear weapons? What's stopping it? Why don't we just take a giant leap forward for humanity, even in the arena that's the most selfish and myopic of all our tendencies? If we make war non-lethal, there's going to be all these other problems. But the brutality and carnage associated with war will be removed. And there will still be missteps. There will still be countries that decide to use a bow or a sword after they've already been banned. And then those things will be exposed, just like today, chemical warfare is exposed. If we make war non-lethal by 2050, we can slowly start to change the status quo for resource grabs, power grabs, all of these things that cause war.
Mother, mother, there's too many of you crying. Brother, 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 there's far too many of you dying.
Thanks for watching. That was the first idea for this absurd series I have, where I'm just going to come up with these weird, sort of almost unrealistic ideas and just explore the train of thoughts. I hope you liked it. If you want to recommend something else, some other absurd idea you've had, let me know. Thanks so much. Have a good day.
War is not the answer for all.